wanted was to get a worm out of my head. I didn't sign up for dimensional travel and murderous gith.
I think we taught that Inquisitor a very valuable lesson. Won't be ambushing anyone else in a hurry, or doing anything else, for that matter.
I think we've overstayed our welcome in this place, if we ever truly had one to begin with. We should leave.
We have a lot to think about. Let's do it far away from this place.
Let's dash for the exit, lest we suffer the full extent of Vlaakith's fury.
I am Vlaakith's most loyal servant. She will not abandon me.
And with that, welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3. My name is Pete, and today we complete what is in fact going to be the final episode of Act 1. It's going to be an action-packed 50 minutes, but after this episode we will take a short break from this series. Not for too long, but at least for a little while. Last time we left off after an encounter with Githyanki Inquisitor Wargus and the Githyanki Queen Vlaakith herself, who revealed to us that the artifact we carry is in fact an astral prism housing the Dream Guardian. Tasked with killing him, we entered the astral prism, but learned some interesting things about Vlaakith instead, and upon our return to the Githyanki crèche, Vlaakith and the Inquisitor betrayed us and attacked, seemingly confirming the Dream Guardian's claims. Now, the entire crèche has likely turned hostile at this point, so it might be a good idea to prepare, and one item that could help us in that endeavor is the Blood of Lathander that might be hidden here somewhere. We noticed 2 statues at the end of the last episode. Let's read their plaques now to find out more.
Lathander bids the setting sun a fond farewell. Lathander blesses the rising bountiful sun.
So, setting sun and rising sun might have something to do with cardinal directions. Just for reference, the corridor we're standing in here points east, so how about we try and turn the statues to the east and west respectively, starting with the rising sun statue here, which of course needs to face east. Right, and now for the other one.
The statue starts to rotate, but its rusty mechanism jams stuck.
Well, good thing we paid close attention during our tour through the monastery 2 episodes ago and read something about grease being useful here. Let's throw a bottle of the stuff at the statue and see if that helps things. And there we go. A hidden panel in the wall opens up. We can climb through, earn a few experience points, and head through the door at the end to enter a new area.
Like it hasn't been touched in a millennium. Incredible.
And so we find ourselves with the passage blocked. We'll take care of that momentarily. For now, I also want to point out that we could now return to camp and change our party from this area, something that is not possible inside the Inquisitor's chambers. We are sticking to the martial crew for the rest of the episode though. Let's read the plaque here now to learn more.
If thou readst this, trespasser, turn back, lest your life be forfeit.
Right, we are warned of danger up ahead, but for now, clearing the passage here is easy. We just need to destroy the energy source next to the door. As we then enter the next section, the game automatically puts us into turn-based mode, very kind, because there is a rather dangerous trap up ahead. This Dawnbreaker device here can fling us off into the chasm to our right and very quickly kill the entire party, which could spell an early end for this honor mode run, so let's disarm it instead, as Tarion has no trouble with a DC of 14. Now, unfortunately, the path ahead remains blocked. The energy source is at the back of the gate this time, another Dawnbreaker device right next to it, and luckily there is a small passageway curving around that leads us there. Technically, we don't even need to disable the energy stone at this point, but we might need to come back through here later. For the trap then, we once again enter turn-based mode as time otherwise does not stop during this arming attempt. The DC here is the exact same as before. A third gate now blocks the path, the energy source for this one hanging off of the rocks below us, but it's easily reached with a few crossbow bolts. And with that, the way onwards is cleared, venturing forth earns us another 30 XP, and we can now climb up the steps here to stand in front of the legendary artifact. We have found the Blood of Lathander. However, considering how many puzzles, traps and guardians we needed to overcome to reach this point, I think it's safe to assume that simply taking it won't be an option. Best to cast guidance on Sylvia now before we take a closer look.
An ornate mace hovers before you, suspended in a shaft of brilliant light. A fist-sized piece of amber flecked with crimson is set in the handle, emitting a radiance all its own. This mace must be the legendary Blood of Lathander. The amber is said to contain the blood of the Morning Lord himself.
We pass the history check to confirm what we really already know, and just because the game allows us to do this, let's see what happens if we just reach out and take it.
The glow around the mace sparkles with beautiful disaster. You recall all the measures meant to keep you from reaching this place. The brutal aches in your body yearn to take it, though you sense it will spell misfortune.
Now, I don't think it could be made any clearer that we should tread carefully here, even though there is a fun little puzzle to solve if we took it by force now. But we went through all the trouble of obtaining the Dawnmaster's crest from the monastery. Let us use it now and place it into the crest panel below the artifact to remove this final layer of protection. And there we are. Sylvia Hairyfoot and her party are now in possession of the Blood of Lathander, our very first legendary item, and I believe also the only legendary item available in Act 1. This mace carries a +3 enchantment, can protect its wielder from falling unconscious once per long rest, sheds holy light that blinds fiends and undead, and allows its wielder to cast the level 6 Sunbeam spell once per long rest, dealing 68 radiant damage and blinding all creatures in its path. Needless to say, this is a very powerful weapon in the right circumstances. Yes, the +3 to hit and damage are generally always useful, but where it really stands out is of course against fiends and undead and enemies that are weak to radiant damage. However, for pure weapon damage, there are better options available, especially for the strength-based characters that would wield the Blood of Lathander, since those would usually be using a larger weapon than a mace.
Quite a heavily guarded treasure. Good job we got past those protections.
Must have been a precious artifact.
Is that such a surprise? It looks powerful enough to level a mountain.
Now, of course, the party has a few things to say about the Blood of Lathander as well, but apart from that, there is no further loot of interest in this area, so with the weapon secured, we can now return to the Inquisitor's chamber. Now at this point, we could simply fast travel out of here, but we don't want to do that just yet. There is still the rest of the crèche to get through, and for maximum experience points, we do want to take the long way out. So, heading back across the bridge here, let's enter sneak mode, because unsurprisingly, the githyanki are not quite done with us yet. We have a little welcoming committee waiting for us, Kith'rak Therezzyn herself, accompanied by 2 more githyanki and 2 wolves. So far, we remain undetected, which means we have a chance to open this fight on our own terms and ideally with surprise. There is one important exception though. Therezzyn has the perfect sentry feat, which means she cannot be surprised, and on top of that she also receives a +2 bonus to initiative. Now Astarion will still beat her in initiative either way, but before we have him attack, there is one small adjustment to make. His +1 scale mail gives him disadvantage on stealth checks, but that is not what we want here. So yes, for the moment, Astarion is going into battle almost naked, but if it helps him stay hidden, that's a price I'm willing to pay. To make things a little bit safer, Lae'zel can also cast Guidance on him for an extra bonus to the stealth check, and with that active, we can sneak him forward into the enemy detection radius. We do need to get this close, because attacking from outside of it would come with a range penalty, and thankfully the DC to remain hidden here is only 12. With all of our bonuses active, Astarion clears that without much trouble. Now we enter turn-based mode, and from here he can attack from range while still remaining undetected. Sharpshooter does bring the hit chance down to 70%, but that is still good enough for our purposes, and of course the target has to be Therezzyn herself, because she's the only one who will not lose her first turn to surprise. Right, and that's 54 damage dealt with the opening attack. All other enemies are surprised, and that means Astarion can land guaranteed critical hits against them later. So for now, let's bring Kith'rak into the fight instead, and have her throw the returning pike at the Kith'rak. Unfortunately, Therezzyn still has a reaction and immediately parries the throw, reducing the damage to only 7. Not great, and Kith'rak also ends up all the way at the back of the order. Sylvia is next then, and to get herself involved, she can fire a simple bonus action shot at Therezzyn. That also triggers ability drain, reducing the enemy's dexterity by 1 point, which in turn drops her AC by 1 as well. Lae'zel is up next. Fighting her own people is surely not what she would have wanted, but at this point they are quite literally standing in our way. So let's go for the trip attack, mostly for the extra damage. Knocking Therezzyn prone is a nice bonus, but the damage is the important part, because after this hit, she is now low enough for Sylvia to finish her off with the next shot. And there we go. The Kith'rak is down, leaving us with 4 enemies still standing. Sylvia aims her last crossbow bolt at the raider in the back, but this is where Astarion can really shine now. Everyone left is surprised, which means every hit against them is a guaranteed crit, so let's spread the damage around a little. Dread Ambusher goes into the wolf, the offhand crossbow shot into the ardent, and the main hand crossbow attack into the other wolf. And with that done, we can now end the turns for Sylvia and Astarion.
Skvar! My own people seek my head. If they will not see sense, then bleed them dry.
Lae'zel now has a few words to say, and it seems like she's finally starting to come around to the idea that yes, these githyanki are very much our enemies now, although sadly we don't get an extra attack here. The mechanics can be a little bit wonky when a character attacks from outside of initiative, so we'll just have to accept that and move on. Kith'rak does get her extra attack though, even if the returning pike has once again decided not to return. Thankfully, Kith'rak is not exactly short on other options, and she can still deal some good damage to the raider. That now brings us into round 2, and at this point the fight is pretty much under our control. Sylvia has 3 crossbow shots available, and all of them will deal enough damage to kill their targets, even without Cull the Weak triggering. That now leaves us with only one final enemy for Astarion. The first shot misses, but Sharpshooter is still active, so that can happen. Luckily, he has another shot ready to go, and this one lands. And with that, our welcoming committee has been dealt with, and we can grab some loot. The most interesting item here is of course carried by Therezzyn herself, the Soulbreaker Greatsword. This is a +1 greatsword that deals an extra 1d4 damage when wielded by a githyanki, but even more importantly, it also gives a +2 bonus to initiative, making it an amazing weapon for Lae'zel, who now equips it immediately. Together with the +1 hide armor and the Bow of Awareness, this now brings her initiative bonus up to +6, matching Astarion actually, which should be very helpful for the fight still ahead. The wolves meanwhile don't carry anything, unsurprisingly, and the 2 remaining githyanki only have the usual weapons, armor and food on them, plus a scroll of mirror image. Nothing spectacular, but of course we'll take it. With that, we can now move on and head back through the captain's quarters. One thing worth pointing out here, because it is actually quite easy to miss, there is a lot of mining equipment sitting on the shelves, pickaxes, shovels and the like. Perhaps this is what the githyanki used to clear out the underground section of the monastery. None of it is of course worth much on its own, but in total it still adds up to a few gold pieces, so we might as well collect it. Just outside the captain's quarters, we can also grab a githyanki longsword and greatsword, an elegant chest with a few magical arrows, and a decorated barrel with some gold coins inside. Now, once again, we could technically rest or change the party at this point, but I don't think we want to do that just yet.
There better be a soft bedroll in my near future.
The current party still has the extra 1d4 radiant damage on weapon attacks from obtaining the Dawnmaster's crest, and since that is very useful for the remaining fights in the crèche, we'll leave everyone exactly where they are. Our next destination is now the supply outpost in the southeastern corner of the crèche, and just like the others, the githyanki in here are now on high alert and very clearly positioned to attack us on sight. Now, you may remember that we traded with Jeera 2 episodes ago, and at the time I pointed out a few interesting items in her inventory that we did not buy. Well, now is the time to obtain them, but crucially we need to do so before combat begins. To that end, Astarion now gets the Gloves of Power for a +1 bonus to Sleight of Hand. That does mean that he loses the advantage from the Gloves of Thievery though, so we instead give Sylvia's Graceful Cloth to him, which restores advantage on all dexterity checks thanks to Cat's Grace. Sylvia meanwhile goes back to her old +1 scale mail. Lae'zel then once again casts Guidance on Astarion, not for stealth this time though, but to help with stealing. Now we stick to the shadows and activate Umbral Shroud, allowing Astarion to turn invisible. With that, he can now move behind Jeera to a spot where none of the enemies can see him, and once he is in position, we activate turn-based mode and start stealing. Technically, we could now steal back everything we sold her earlier, but that feels a bit too cheesy for me and it might set a bad precedent for all future traders, so we're not going to do that. There are also 2 very high value items worth mentioning, the Gloves of Dexterity with a DC of 16 and the Knife of the Undermountain King with a DC of 17. We are not going to target either of those right now, don't worry though, we will get them later. For now, we begin with Larethian's Wrath, a +1 longsword, but importantly, one of the few longswords in the game with the Finesse property, meaning it can be used with either Dexterity or Strength. The DC to steal it is only 7, however, this is the roll we need, not the actual DC. As far as I know, Guidance is also not factored into this number, plus we have advantage, so it is no surprise to see Astarion succeed. Next up is the Unseen Menace, a +1 pike that turns invisible while equipped and grants advantage on attacks as long as it keeps hitting, making it a great weapon for Karlach. After that, we grab a Witchbreaker, a +1 battle axe that gives advantage against concentrating enemies, somewhat niche perhaps, but it could prove useful at some point, and with a DC of only 4, there really is no reason not to take it. Finally, we also steal the Vital Conduit Boots, which give a +1 bonus to athletics and grant 8 temporary hit points whenever the wearer casts a concentration spell. The medium armor requirement may be a small restriction, but this could be interesting for someone like Shadowheart, so into our pockets it goes. And with that, we have everything we wanted, time to turn this into a fight. We briefly end turn-based mode to refresh Astarion's action, then immediately re-enter it, and now, standing right behind Jeera, he can open things up with 2 melee attacks. Right, and surprise is triggered, so we should have plenty of room to work with here. The 2 enemies up on the elevated platform do have high initiative rolls, but Astarion cannot reach them from where he's standing, so instead we'll use the full power of the short sword of First Blood on the 2 guards right next to Jeera. We once again get automatic critical hits, and with the opening attacks, Astarion immediately puts in a lot of work here. For his bonus action then, we can move him up onto the elevation here and fire the hand crossbow from range, adding the sharpshooter bonus damage on top. So, after just Astarion's turn, 3 enemies are already almost dead. Not a bad start at all. Now we turn our attention to the 2 enemies at the top here, beginning with Kith'rak and another throw. Once again, she is placed at the very end of the initiative order, and once again the returning pike does not actually return, but the damage is still good. Sylvia is next, and she can now target the last enemy still at full health. Both shots land, call the weak triggers, and that is enough for the kill. With her extra attack, she can then immediately take down the other enemy as well, leaving this fight very much under control. Now, let's move in Lae'zel to enter the initiative too, and remember, with her current gear, she has a +6 bonus, so she will act early. We check her movement range first, notice it doesn't quite suffice, so let us use her bonus action to jump to cover a bit more ground, and from there she can strike the enemy on the left. And that's enough for the kill, while her second attack goes into Jeera. Sadly, that one misses. And just for fun, let's also bring in Shovel to attack the enemy on the right. Unfortunately, she misses too, but I have a good feeling that this is not going to decide the fight. So, we can end all turns here. Kith'rak sadly does not get an extra attack, and so round 2 begins, and then ends almost immediately, as 2 shots from Sylvia are enough to clear out the remaining 2 enemies. With the supply outpost dealt with now, it is time to loot, and this is where that bit of stealing before the fight pays off. Now the way this works is that when a trader NPC dies, the 3 highest value items from their trade inventory remain on the body. In Jeera's case, that means she still carries 9 arrows of arcane interference, the knife of the Undermountain King, and the gloves of dexterity, and that is exactly why we stole the other items before starting combat. The knife of the Undermountain King is a +2 short sword, so not actually a lower damage dagger as the name might suggest, and it re-rolls damage whenever a 2 or lower is rolled. On top of that, it gives advantage against obscure targets, making it an amazing weapon for Astarion. The gloves of dexterity, meanwhile, simply set the wearer's dexterity to 18 and also give a +1 bonus to attack rolls, which is obviously fantastic for pretty much anyone. Jeera also always carries the Amulet of Branding, which grants the Brand the Weak spell, allowing us to make a target vulnerable to the 3 physical damage types. Astarion now equips the knife and gloves immediately. The knife goes into the offhand though, because we still want to preserve the 1d8 damage bonus against full health targets from his main hand weapon. The gloves then raise his dexterity from 17 to 18, improving both attack and damage, with another +1 to attacks on top from the gloves themselves. For thievery and lockpicking, we can of course always re-equip the gloves of thievery situationally, but in combat this is a very strong upgrade. As for armor, he'll wear the spider silk armor for the moment, mainly for the +1 bonus to stealth. The +2 hide armor remains on Lae'zel, which means Astarion's initiative bonus now sits at +7, but could be improved to +8 if needed. There is also a bit more loot worth mentioning in the area: a chest with some arrows, a nearby trunk with food items, potions in the chest at the back, and 2 scrolls in another one close by. The 2 githyanki at the top carry the usual weapons and armor, plus a key that we'll find a use for later, as well as the crossbow of arcane force. This lets the wielder use a bonus action to add a 1d4 force damage to all attacks, which sounds pretty good. The issue is that it is a heavy crossbow, and the characters who can use it usually have better options most of the time. Further back in the cave, we find another chest with more potions, a few weapons nearby, and another crossbow sitting on the table on the other side. Even further, close to the exit leading back to the monastery exterior, there is a barrel with alchemy ingredients, a sack with food items, and a few more weapons and arrows, all worth taking, if only to sell them later. With the supply outpost cleared, we can now head back the way we came, climb up the ladder here, and from this position we overlook the entrance guard post. The githyanki down below are once again on high alert, but this time we have the high ground, and that should hopefully make the fight a bit easier. To set things up, Astarion casts Featherfall on the party, then sneaks up to the ledge and fires a crossbow shot at Kith'rak, the guard captain. Now, I did unfortunately forget to re-enable dual wielding here, so we miss out on a little bit of extra damage, but we still get surprise and a critical hit, which is the important part. At this point, we also want to make sure the rest of the party enters turn-based mode as well, because otherwise Featherfall might run out before we actually get to use it. Astarion then uses his bonus action to drop down from the ledge. Featherfall prevents any damage from the fall, and from here he can use his Dread Ambusher melee attack against the nearby warrior. That's another crit, and this time enough to kill with a single strike. His final attack then goes into the other full health warrior, dealing 23 damage. Not quite a kill, but still a very solid start. Lae'zel is next, and she can also drop down, though we make sure to do so outside of enemy vision. We then briefly exit and re-enter turn-based mode to refresh her bonus action, allowing her to move into position and strike the Ardent from stealth. The second attack goes against the same target, and that is enough to take him down. Because Lae'zel gets the kill, Great Weapon Master now gives her a bonus action attack, and we choose the nearby raider as the next target. Kith'rak, meanwhile, moves up to the ledge and throws her pike at the raider on the opposite high ground. Shovel also drops down, although we won't have her attack. Instead, Sylvia takes care of cleanup duty. Her first shot kills with another crit, the second one triggers Cold Weak for the next kill, and the third strikes Kith'rak. Sadly, it does not quite deal enough damage to finish her off, but at this point we are not exactly in any danger anymore. So we end everyone's turns here, and once again Kith'rak sadly does not get an extra attack. Still, wrapping things up should be easy enough, as only 2 enemies now remain. Kith'rak dies to Sylvia's first shot on the next round. The warrior then parries her second attack, reducing the damage, which means Astarion has to get involved one more time. 2 melee strikes later, the final enemy goes down, and with that another area is cleared. Now let's have a look around and pick up anything worth acquiring. Up here on the overlook we can find a book containing a collection of stories about kobolds, several bottles of alcohol, and another book with a few tips on how to protect oneself against Mind Flayer psionic manipulations. The gist of it, however, is to simply avoid them. In the chamber below there is a crèche with some gold and a fire amber, as well as a chest containing more gold and a ring. We also have 2 locked exits leading into the central corridor, so let's re-equip the Gloves of Thievery on Astarion and have him pick one of them open. The DC is 15, but with advantage from the gloves, that should not be too much of a problem. With the way open, we can regroup and loot the dead guards. Most of them only carry the usual weapons and armor, but Kith'rak does have one item of interest, the Ring of Arcane Synergy. This grants the Arcane Synergy condition whenever the wearer deals damage with a cantrip, meaning their weapon attacks then deal extra damage equal to their spellcasting modifier. Definitely a handy item for cantrip-based characters like Will, for example. The remaining bodies only have food, armor and weapons, plus 1 scroll of sleep on the last one here. On the table nearby we also find a Githyanki report on kobold activity, and their suggested course of action is, apparently, to simply ignore them, which, as you may recall, ultimately left us to deal with those kobolds. Now, using the key we looted earlier, we can open the locked door on the other side of the corridor here, leading us into the prison area. The skeletons in here have a few useful things on them: some gold, a bloodied note from a dying monk, a dagger, a Grimishka tail, and a scroll of Crown of Madness. The fresher body in the middle of the room then belongs to Elika, the tiefling we previously met at the entrance to the mountain pass overlooking the Githyanki patrol. Clearly, she did not make it very far. We can loot her for weapons and armor, but more importantly, we can also use Speak with the Dead on her to find out what exactly happened.
The corpse regards you. lifelessly.
Now, since we already know who she is, there is no need to waste a question on that. Instead, let's begin by asking how she ended up here.
Road to Baldur's Gates. Blocked. Took new path. Found monastery. Remembered.
Right, captured by the Githyanki, no surprise there. Next, let's ask what exactly she remembered about the monastery. Perhaps she knows something useful.
A rhyme. Blood of Lathander. Hidden. Guarded by monks. Decided to look for it.
And let's follow up on that and have her tell us how the rhyme about the Blood of Lathander goes.
East. West. Blood is blessed. Beneath sun, it finds its rest.
Of course, at this point we already have the weapon, but this can help you solve the statue puzzle. After that, we ask who killed her.
githyanki. Slowly. Painfully.
And finally, where she came from. There is not much else useful to ask at this point.
Near Maiden's Bridge. Exiles. Lost everything.
The spell's power wanes. You can ask no more questions.
And with that, we climb up on the other side to loot a chest with some potions, and also to help ourselves to whatever the dead raider has on him, before we return back inside the crèche, because we are not quite done here yet. The eastern side is now clear, but the center and western sections still remain. And the center section brings us towards the classroom, and this one is actually a fairly crowded fight, 9 enemies in total, many of them youths, but also Varsh Kethk, the warfare instructor. With an AC of 17 and 94 hit points and a very dangerous crossbow, he is definitely the one we need to pay the most attention to. However, the entrance here is in clear view of the enemies, and unfortunately we cannot shoot from beyond their sight range without taking a range penalty. So let's make one quick equipment change and give Asterion the disintegrating Nightwalkers, allowing him to use Misty Step and get behind the enemies before the fight begins. From there, we open with a ranged attack on Kethk, the most dangerous target in the room. Surprise is triggered, and after just 2 shots, our target has already taken 57 damage, an excellent start. Now, with all other enemies surprised, we want to use the guaranteed crits against lower HP targets. A Dread Ambusher crit immediately kills one youth with 28 hit points. The bonus action offhand shot comes just 1 point shy of taking out the next enemy, and the main hand shot deals another 26 damage against a third target. So, after Asterion's first round alone, that is 110 damage dealt, not bad at all. Kith'rak then simply enters the room, and importantly does not attack yet. That puts her last in the initiative order, but once her turn comes around, she should actually be able to strike twice and keep her extra attack, instead of losing it like before. So Lae'zel is next, and we send her straight for Kethk with a trip attack. This forces a strength save from a dexterity-based enemy, so we have a pretty good chance of knocking him prone, although once again the extra damage is the main reason for spending the superiority die here. Even better, we now have 3 low-health enemies standing close together, which means this is a perfect moment to use Cleave, and there we go, all 3 of them eliminated in one fell swoop. Still, that leaves 5 more enemies standing, so Sylvia is up next. Her first shot goes into the youth on the eastern side of the room, the second one follows into the same target and gets the kill, the third shot then goes into another nearby youth, and with a high enough damage roll, Carl the Weak triggers as well, giving us yet another kill. That leaves only 3 enemies, and with everyone else done for now, we can end all turns and get to Kith'rak. As planned, she now gets to attack properly, throwing the pike twice at the youths on the western side of the room here, 1 throw for each of them. Round 2 then begins with Lae'zel attacking the Ardent, the last enemy still at full health, and her first hit already deals 22 damage. Sylvia follows up, and once again this is mostly cleanup duty. All remaining enemies are at low health, the threshold for Cult Weak is currently 10 hit points, and all of her shots have hit chances above 95%. So, 3 bolts later, the classroom is cleared, and with that taken care of, it's time to look for loot. By the way, because of all the combat we've been doing, we are already about 2/3 of the way to level 8, so the thorough approach here is definitely paying off. Now, the loot in the classroom itself is not too exciting, mostly just weapons and armor. Even Kethk himself has nothing unique on him, and the only other item worth mentioning is a scroll of Crown of Madness on the Ardent here. On the eastern side, we then find a crate with 2 apples inside, and that's it, nothing more of value. So, let's move on to the western side of the crèche, but before we get into more combat, there is still the portrait of Vlaakith over here.
This imposing portrait depicts a powerful githyanki warrior, undeniably regal in her mien.
Vlaakith herself. She is both the sun that blinds us and the void that contains us. Praise be.
In the corner of the painting is a small symbol you can't quite place.
And, well, after her betrayal last episode, drawing her a new face feels a little more justified than it did before. Success is still not automatic though. It is a DC 16 dexterity check. Sylvia does roll with advantage and we have guidance, but even with that, we need to spend 1 inspiration point to make it work.
You take a moment to fully appreciate your masterpiece. She certainly looks a little less regal now.
A wretched display. I thought you better than such juvenile antics.
And now, with that important moment of artistic expression taken care of, there are now only 2 areas left to clear, beginning with the Infirmary. Near the entrance, we can quickly grab a healing potion sitting on a crate, and inside we find 7 enemies. Once again, some of them are youths, but we also have Ghustil Stornugoss, the crèche's healer. And we also have the same issue as before. The enemies have clear line of sight to the entrance, and attacking from further away would come with a range penalty. So, to get Astarion closer, we equip him with the Shadow of Menzoberranzan for another dose of invisibility, although this one only lasts for 2 turns, so we enter turn-based mode, use his bonus action to dash first, and only then activate invisibility, because using the bonus action afterwards would break it instantly. After moving into the room, we then wait 1 turn to refresh all of Astarion's actions, and then we can strike from invisibility with a melee attack to begin combat and gain surprise. And what follows is, quite frankly, a little ridiculous. The opening double crit instantly kills the Gish for 68 damage, the following Dread Ambusher crit then gets another kill worth 41 damage, and finally 2 more melee attacks against Stornugoss take her down as well, dealing another 48 damage. So that is 157 damage in 1 turn from Astarion alone, and we didn't even use a single sharpshooter ranged attack. Absolutely insane. Still, this now leaves us with 4 more enemies, so let's have Lae'zel move in next to strike one of the youths, the only enemy just barely within her movement range. Therefore, her second attack has to be made at the same target, and it does get the kill, unlocking a Great Weapon Master bonus attack, sadly with no enemy close enough to actually use it on. Karlach then simply enters the initiative without attacking yet, once again making sure she gets her 2 attacks properly once her turn comes around. Sylvia is next, starting with an offhand bonus action shot against the highest initiative enemy. Her second shot then also takes them out, and the third one instantly kills the second to last enemy thanks to Cult Weak. That leaves only one opponent, and 2 throws from Karlach should be enough to end this, except the first one is a critical miss, so it looks like we do need a second round after all. Not much of one though. Sylvia fires only one more shot, and with that the room is cleared. Now, for the loot, the most interesting item here is the Ring of Elemental Infusion. Whenever the wearer deals elemental damage with a spell or cantrip, their weapon is infused with an extra 1d4 damage of that same type until the end of the next turn. That opens up some interesting synergies for hybrid spellcasting martial characters. Warlocks like Will, for example, could probably make good use of it. Everything else is fairly standard, weapons, armor and food, while Stornugoss carries the Aberration Hunter's Amulet, which makes a lot of sense for a githyanki healer in a crèche like this, because if the wearer is githyanki, they gain advantage on intelligence saving throws, aberrations have disadvantage when attacking the wearer, and the amulet also grants the Ancient Grudges bonus action, giving advantage on attacks against aberrations. Aberrations like Mind Flayers, of course, who are probably the intended target of an amulet like this. In the northwestern corner, we also find a chest with some gold and an arrow, and in Stornugoss's lab there is a decorated barrel with a few valuables. Everything else we have already taken. The sleeping quarters also have an elegant chest with gold and alchemy ingredients, plus a second chest containing more gold and some holy water, perhaps a leftover from the monks who used to live here. And with that, there is only one final room left to clear, the hatchery. This one is a bit sad, I feel, because the main githyanki in there is, comparatively speaking, actually a kind soul, but at this point he would still attack us on sight, so if we want to make it out of the crèche properly, we'll have to deal with him as well. Thankfully, the door to the hatchery is not in clear view of the enemies, so for once we don't need any major shenanigans to start this fight on our terms. Astarion's stealth is also high enough to move through the side range of all 3 enemies and still remain hidden, which once again allows us to open with surprise after his first attack.
I'll make you wish you'd never been born.
The opening shots are a bit of a mixed bag, 1 hit, 1 miss, but we do get confirmation here that the stealth DC was only 12, so even with a roll of just 2, Astarion would have succeeded. Now, staying out of the toxic water, he can move in a little closer and shoot again. The Dread Ambusher crit deals 52 damage, which is a fantastic hit, and then we follow up with 2 regular shots against the warrior on the ground. Both of those hit as well, although tactically it probably would have been smarter to attack the other enemy on the high ground instead, as the warrior on the ground can be reached by Lae'zel, while the high ground raider cannot, but either way, we now have 2 enemies almost dead. That makes Sylvia's job very simple now. She can finish off the Varsh with a bonus action shot and then turn her attention to the raider on the high ground. He still has the full 41 hit points left, but with 2 shots available that should be enough, and indeed it is. Which now leaves Lae'zel with the easiest job in the room. The warrior only has 6 hit points remaining, so 1 clean strike is all it takes to clear out the hatchery. The loot here is once again nothing spectacular. 2 of the enemies carry elixirs of acid resistance, which makes a lot of sense considering the large acid pool covering much of the hatchery. Other than that though, it's mostly standard weapons and armor, although considering the sheer amount we have collected in this video, we should be able to trade them all in for a small fortune. Now, with this fight taken care of, the crèche has been eradicated, which admittedly does feel a little evil. But then again, they did attack us first, and at this point it is probably safe to say that they would not have let us leave peacefully anyway. More importantly though, the crèche was the last major unexplored location in Act 1, which means our next stop will be the Shadow-Cursed Lands, and with that the beginning of Act 2. There are 2 ways to get there. We can either continue through the mountain pass, or return to the Underdark and take the elevator in Grimforge. I have not yet fully made up my mind which path we'll take, so feel free to leave a comment with your favorite, but luckily we also don't have to decide just yet. Because I think it's time that we return to camp, which also gives us our first look at the unique crèche campsites. None of the companions have any new lines of dialogue for us though, so we can move straight into a long rest. Now, very important, taking that long rest does mean we will lose both the permanent bless from the Dream Guardian as well as the Morning Lord's Radiance bonus damage, which is really unfortunate because those two bonuses make us very, very strong right now and would obviously be very useful in Act 2 as well. Still, after everything that happened in the crèche, I think it feels fitting to rest one more time before we move on. Ending the day also prompts a conversation with Kith'rak, so let's find out what's on her mind.
Hey, soldier, Well, I'm not feeling so good. My engine is getting worse. Feels like it's going to burst out of my chest. We need to catch up with Damon. See if he's thought of a way to fix this thing. If it can be fixed.
It seems like her infernal engine is deteriorating rather quickly, but I see no need to confront her with the potentially fatal consequences of that. Instead, let's promise her that we'll seek out Damon and see what can be done.
I'm sure we will. But, in case we don't, a bit of advice. You leave your left flank wide open. If I'm ever not around to cover it, you may find yourself on the wrong side of a goblin spear one of these days.
And so, with that little bit of tactical advice from Kith'rak, we can finally go to sleep. Along the way, however, let us unlock a fun little achievement, taking a long rest using only alcohol. I believe we have earned it.
Blood hurts.
During the night then, the Owlbear cub stops by, seemingly hurt, and since we cast Speak with Animals beforehand, we can talk to it, and the persuasion check to calm it down has a DC of only 5, so it should not be an issue.
Look, cut.
We could then follow up with a second persuasion check, but all 3 options here are easy enough to pass, and since Sylvia has proficiency in medicine thanks to her Dark Urge background, let's tend to the wound properly.
As the wound closes, the cub begins testing his weight on the leg.
Good. No hurt.
Afterwards, we can now ask how the injury happened.
Teeth. Claws. Bigger.
And why exactly it decided to fight something bigger than itself, whatever that may have been.
Strong. Fight. Win.
For the future though, let's tell it to pick a more suitable target next time. After all the trouble we went through to keep this little creature alive, we would very much prefer not to lose it now.
Too big. Wait. Strong. Show you.
Oh, brilliant. Now we'll never be rid of it.
Kith'rak now gains the Cub Tamer inspiration, because with that the Owlbear Cub has successfully been tamed. Also of note, Shovel is no longer displayed as a summon at the moment, but no worries, she will return after sleeping, so let's do exactly that. The next morning we wake up hungover, a condition thankfully only lasting for 10 turns, but also with the bottoms-up achievement unlocked. Once the hangover has passed, we can leave camp, return and immediately take a second long rest. However, before ending the day, let us also make sure to cast Speak with Animals again. There are no new camp conversations this time, so we can go straight to sleep, and since we don't need any abilities or resources restored, a partial rest is perfectly fine. We do have plenty of supplies, but there is no reason to waste them. During the night, we hear some noise and it sounds like the animals, so we should probably go and check on them. And thanks to Speak with Animals, we don't need to figure out what happened ourselves and can instead simply ask them.
Just a bad dream. It's all right.
Goblins had me in a cage, poked me with pointy sticks.
Hush now, it was just a nightmare. We're safe here with Mistress. He'll settle in. Give it a little time.
And isn't that lovely? Scratch is comforting the Owlbear cub after a nightmare, so let us compliment the two of them on making a cozy pair.
He's still young. I remember Gonwick would let me sleep under his cloak when I was a pup. It helps.
Now, with the cub's recent adventures, let's also make sure that both of them understand that they need to stay safe.
No hurt, Scratch. Never.
Easy now. The Guardian's just looking out for us.
Now, interestingly, Scratch calls us his guardian here, even though he used the word mistress before, which feels like a small but meaningful change. Let's ask about it.
I suppose I did. You've been good to us. To both of us. Gonwick would be happy I'm with you, I think.
Like it here. Warm fire. Scratch reminds me of Big Brother.
The cub, meanwhile, mentions a brother, and we did not notice another cub during our initial encounter in the Owlbear nest, so what happened?
Used to. Mother ate him.
Right, seems like nature was rather brutal before we arrived, which only makes it more important now that these two feel safe and welcome in our camp.
Thank you.
And there we go. For petting both of them, we unlock another achievement. You have 2 hands for a reason. And with that, I think it is finally time to wrap up the episode, and with that, Act 1. If you think I forgot anything important before moving on, then please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I do plan on taking a quick break from the series here, because truth be told, I really did not expect Act 1 alone to take 42 episodes. But Act 2 will happen sooner rather than later, and I'm very eager to keep playing. For now though, thank you all so much for sticking with the series, and for pushing me towards making it in the first place. Baldur's Gate 3 has been a tremendous enjoyment for me, and at this point it has very much become one of my all-time favorite games. So perhaps don't be sad about the break, look forward instead to a few new things ahead, and I promise we will continue this adventure very soon. As always then, if you enjoyed the episode and maybe the series up until this point, then go ahead and leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course also go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.